people here. So what we'll do is begin this meeting with apologies for absence, if we have any. I have Guy Renner-Thompson. Any more? No. Okay, thank you very much. We move on to minutes of the meeting that we held on the 7th of June. These have been circulated, and I will sign them later on if everyone is happy for that to happen. Could I see proposed by Councillor Patterson, seconded by Councillor Wimmer. All in favour, John? Yes. Okay, that's unanimous. Now, disclosure of members' interests. I think there may be some interest to declare. Jeff Watson.
Advance membership, not a personal interest, or won't be for them.
No.
Likewise, as a director of the land side, a personal interest, but I would be leaving them.
Okay, thank you. Right. In that case, we've got those. Thank you very much indeed. We're going to move on now to our first report, which is Homes for Ukraine, the financial support around that. I'm going to ask Colin Horncastle to briefly introduce this, and then Philip Soderquist will give us an update on where we are today.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, it's a very straightforward report. It's all about the Ukrainian situation. It's the help and support that we're giving the refugees and what we're expected to do from the government. Basically, what's happened is that it's all in the report, so I'll not go through the actual funding amounts, but how much we are going to get from the government to cover the situation. But what's happened is that we aren't going to get the money up front, so we've got to actually spend the money in advance. There's three recommendations there. The first one is request to spend the money in advance and then get the money from the government later. And then the Cabinet approved the request to spend up to the value, obviously. But it's the third recommendation that is really important about the enhanced DBS checks. Right from the start of this situation, when I've been having regular discussions with Phil Soderquist, it came to light that the normal DBS checks weren't actually picking up some of the real problems that we're having behind the scenes. And in one particular case, an enhanced check did. And if you think about it, we've got to make life as easy and as comfortable and as friendly and welcoming as possible for people who are coming to this country. And don't forget, this is a new country to them. It's a new environment, a new culture, new language, and we've got to make them as welcome as possible. So that's why it's important that we do these enhanced DBS checks, because these people must come here knowing that we've done everything possible to make the situation safe. And I'll just leave it at that. Three straightforward recommendations, which I fully support.
Thank you very much, Colin. Phil, would you like to add to that, please? Perhaps you could tell us how many Ukrainians are currently in Northumberland, and how do things look over the next 2 or 3 months?
Yes, thank you, Leader. Can do. So I suppose the report is very much a moving feast, because when this was originally produced, we'd based the sort of financial modelling for the purpose of the report on, I believe it was 255 arrivals within Northumberland. That figure now stands at 279, and again that will change as we go forward. So within the report, what you see is actually the number we knew at that particular time, the 255, and there's an additional number which is the 548 specified in the report. So again, that's the number that is sitting on the portal where there has been a match made, but they actually haven't arrived within Northumberland at this point in time. So yes, very much the position is we are seeing people still generally arriving in Northumberland. I would say that process is still providing a good support network to those guests that arrive from Ukraine. What I would say, though, is that we are now starting to enter probably an enhanced period of support with some of those families. We have seen a number of situations where, unfortunately, the actual relationship between the host and the guest has broken down. So my service is actually supporting 30 individuals specifically now where there is no direct support from the host themselves. So that increases the demands upon the service itself. We're also seeing a period of time now whereby From the first arrivals in probably March, we're starting to come towards the end of the first 6-month period, which was the initial commitment that people had to give as a host. So what we're now starting to do is to make contact with all of those original hosts to see whether or not they're going to actually provide that accommodation beyond that initial 6-month period, which was the original requirement under the Homes for Ukraine scheme. So again, what this is doing, I think, is putting a lot of focus on the team at the moment, which we have increased in terms of resources to meet these demands, which are growing. We're also seeing an increase in demands across a number of service areas. I know colleagues are in the room in terms of education, etc., and that's putting some pressure on our schools. So what we do have sitting behind this is we have a working group which is looking at the overall programme for Homes of Ukraine. We've also got a subgroup in education which is chaired by Audrey, whereby what we are trying to do is to future forecast what the demands will be across Northumberland, both for our communities and our services. So it is key in terms of the recommendations that we have the ability to actually spend the money in advance of it being received by government, because those pressures will come to us sooner rather than later, and we simply can't wait for that money to come through from government to then respond or look to upskill or increase resources. So hence those recommendations have been set out, whereby we would look for authority from Cabinet to spend in advance. The caveat is that actually spending will not exceed anticipated budget from government. And again, I can give an assurance that in terms of the actual grant we will get from government, i.e. 10,500 per individual that arrives, is guaranteed by government and is based upon those arrival numbers that we actually are responsible for feeding back to government. So we've got a confirmed budget, but it will just take time to come through the system. So it's very much about giving us the ability to respond to issues now, spend money now, but with the caveat that this will be managed through our normal financial processes, through normal budget control, so we will never exceed the actual income that is due to Northumberland. Importantly, it's important to also note that where there is an underspend of any of those monies, the expectation is that money will be returned to DLUC as well. So we are again actively looking at what the opportunities are to make the best use of that money, both in terms of our communities and those arriving from Ukraine, to ensure that they can, for the period of time that they spend in Northumberland, settle and find a safe place to live until they're able to return back to Ukraine.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Phil. I'd like to actually ask the other officers who are involved. So we've got adults, social care, we've got children, we've got public health, Northumberland Community Together. Is there anything that you would like to say around how the scheme is going and how things are working well, or where there are issues that are concerning you so far as refugees are concerned from Ukraine, please?
So there are currently 119 children with places across Northumberland in our schools. We have seen some pressure on particular schools that are first choice, and we are managing that really carefully and as well as we possibly can. We've increased the English as an additional language support infrastructure to be able to ensure that all the schools and children and families have got the support they need. And actually I'm really pleased, and you've heard me say this before, but we do have one English teacher who arrived from Ukraine who is now in the final throes of becoming an employee and working with us in Northumberland. We have a second English teacher who is just settling down, and then we expect that they will join that team. They will offer a programme across a 6 weeks break, so when the children are ready to go back in September, that'll feel like a much smoother transition. And the skills development team have been working alongside a number of colleagues who have hosted families and also have a particular skill. So just last week we were able to hook up a welder who'd arrived from Ukraine with 3 different companies advertising the jobs, and he got the first job that he went for. So some real good successes there, but it's working well. It's not without its challenges, but we are working together to get those ironed out as quickly as possible.
Lovely, thank you very much. Okay, right. Anything else, Colin, from you? Any questions or queries? Okay, if not, then can we take those recommendations, those 3 recommendations, proposed by Councillor Horncastle and seconded by Councillor Patterson? Are we all in favour? That's unanimous. So thank you very much for that. Thank you, Phil, for all the work you and your staff are doing on this, because it's very difficult and very important work, and much appreciated. So now we move on to the next one, which is number 5, which is Advanced Northumberland Limited and its subsidiaries. I'm going to ask Richard Wearmouth to introduce this, and then if we have Jan Willis somewhere in the ether, somewhere. There she is. Hey.
Here I am, Leader.
Marvellous.
Good morning.
Okay. Good morning. Good morning. So, Richard, would you introduce this, please, and then I'll pass over to Jan.
Thank you, Leader. So I'll preface this with a few comments and probably take a little bit longer than normal, just because anything that comes before the Cabinet or the Council with regard to advance normally brings about with it a load of noise from certain folks. So indulge me just a little bit if you would be so kind. So the Council, and in particular Cabinet, as the administration of the Council, have been proactively addressing issues raised by Mr Calla in his report into governance at this Council, and that's really important for councillors and the public to understand. Some councillors, and perhaps one in particular, has sought to use the Calla report as a way of suggesting that there's somehow issues within advance, which is a little bit odd, because that's not really what the report, the Calla report, is saying or talking about. And that has been done, in such a way that doesn't reflect the facts. So I need to be really clear, and I'm going to just read out some excerpts, if I may, from Mr Calla's report to ensure that there's no room for misunderstanding about why it's important to get governance right of our companies, including Advance. So Mr Calla criticises the Council's governance of Advance in multiple parts of his report. He refers to council infrastructure not working, no evaluation of the role of NCC, draft reports raising issues around that, and that when those reports were produced by officers, there were deletions by other officers that raised issues around openness and learning. The Calla report points to issues around the shareholder representative role, saying that the Chief Executive has undertaken the role without an adequate understanding of the limits of that role, the role of the company directors, and how to report to Cabinet on issues relevant to the shareholder, i.e. the Council. And that effective governance at the Council was not in place. It talks about undermining of the board and the managing director, which led to resignations, as some of us will remember, of some excellent members of the board, with one of them noting that the Chief Executive controls everything. Now, many people for whom this is just something that sort of goes on at County Hall won't necessarily understand from some of that text what Mr Calla's driving at. And so, just to make it absolutely clear, which is a part of our role as politicians, I'm going to try and assist a little bit. And so when Mr Calla talks about draft reports raising issues with those parts then deleted by officers and issues around openness and learning, I don't have any doubt what that's referring to. Officers told me, and have told me, that they've written reports only for reports to be hugely redrafted to the point that those reports bore no resemblance to what they were talking about, and they actually asked to have their names removed. And that's a hugely concerning pattern of behaviour. These heavily edited reports were taken by very senior officers to audit, and at those audit meetings, the chair of the audit committee then, Councillor Hill, failed to invite anyone from Advance to talk about their experience of governance arrangements, and unsurprisingly, perhaps to some of us, those reports were then leaked to Facebook and the press, often within minutes of the meeting ending, actually. And I bring that up because it affects Advance's reputation, and there are people who try to take that into the press and in other places, suggesting that there are governance concerns regarding Advance within Advance. this is very much, and this is what these reports are that you're considering, it's about the council's governance of Advance. And what's doubly disturbing is that those reports have gone to the Audit Committee when they should have come to, in fact, to Economic Overview and Scrutiny. And that's indeed what these reports have done. So there's multiple lessons to be learnt, and I just want to emphasise the ones that we have learnt. So we brought these reports to the proper committee. They've gone to Economic Overview and Scrutiny yesterday, and we've got some feedback from them. We've held those meetings, as I understand, in public. Advance representatives, I think the Chief Operating Officer attended the meeting, and I spoke to the chair of that committee, and he was very grateful for Advance attending. And that leads us on to what we've got here, which is some revisions to the company articles. We've got some amendments to the powers of the shareholder representative, and that's all about making sure that Advance governance from the council is done properly and effectively. Some of these changes have been proposed over a longer period of time and have taken a little bit of time to work their way through the system with the various processes that we have here, and others are reflecting the findings of Mr. Calla, which is right and proper that we reflect those and correct any issues that we need to. It's the first step, so there will be more. There'll be more to do, undoubtedly. So there's questions around the board composition and how the council engages and acts in its arrangements with Advance. So there will be more to come, but this is the first step in just making sure that our internal council processes are fit for purpose. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I would just underline my complete and total support for Advance and everything that they do and everything they've done. The work that has been carried out across the county is far more than a lot of us realise. And I really do regret that we had those extremely unfortunate and mischievous leaks of confidential material. I'm absolutely clear that we are working in a much better atmosphere and that Advance will go from strength to strength, and we are going to make it one of our first priorities after the summer break to bring forward reports on the future of Advance to cover it from the type of behaviour that has been shown by one or two, and to ensure that that continues to do really good work. So we will be bringing that in the very early autumn. In the meantime, Jan, are you there still? Would you like to add anything, Jan?
Yes, thank you, Leader. I thought it might be helpful for Cabinet and for members of the public who are watching this meeting just to summarise some of the key changes that we've made to the articles that are in front of you for approval this morning. So the first is that we've amended the quorum to make it clear that there must be a minimum of 50% of the board directors to constitute a quorum, and that must include at least one member appointed by the County Council. We've introduced the concept of relevant agreements. So this is to ensure that we have greater flexibility as we move forward. So if the council were to wish to introduce agreements around specific issues, it could do so without having to amend the articles themselves and to refile them at Companies House every time it wanted to make those sorts of arrangements. And one specific example of such an arrangement is the scheme of financial delegation, which Cabinet are being asked to approve, which sets financial thresholds below which reserved matter consent is not required for transactions. And we're doing that as a pragmatic measure to ensure that the day-to-day operation of the company and day-to-day business decisions are not slowed down by the need to constantly seek shareholder approval for matters which are just business as usual. And also we have tidied up and made more explicit some of the shareholder rights in terms of attending meetings and issuing directions to the company should that be necessary. There was one specific issue that came up at Corporate Services and Economic Growth Overview and Scrutiny Committee yesterday when they considered the report, and that was a concern about the attendance and active participation of the shareholder representative at board meetings, and whether there was a risk that the shareholder representative might be seen as acting as a shadow director. I think members will note in the role description for the shareholder representative in the sorry, if I can just find the specific point, it talks about point 4, ensuring not to influence directors or voting outcomes. So I just wanted to clarify that point, that although the shareholder representative would attend board meetings, as indeed I do currently, it would not be as a voting member of the board. It would be there to represent the views of the shareholder, to inform discussions and decisions by board members. So I hope that is clear from the role profile. And I think the other point that needs to be made is that we've set out very clearly in this role profile the expectations, which are less about the actual role itself and more about the way in which that role is exercised. So maintaining active communications and collaboration, building effective and transparent relationships, and actively working with the board and officers of Advance to promote those good working relationships. So I will stop there, Leader. I hope that's helpful by way of explanation of the purpose of the changes that you're being asked to approve today.
Thank you very much. I'm grateful to the Scrutiny Committee yesterday, who have tabled 2 points for us to look at. They are happy with the paper, but would like to change the wording of the shareholder representative's role, which is to attend and play an active role at board meetings of the company, whilst recognising the authority to make decisions lies with the board of the company. And secondly, the committee would like to add a further report in 6 months, if appropriate, to review implementation, which I certainly would agree to. Do you have any problems with us changing that first one to the proposed wording, Jan?
No, I don't, Leader. I think that's a perfectly sensible suggestion.
Yeah, I agree. Good. Any questions? Wojciech?
Maybe not a question, just a comment. I would like to say how important is Advance in delivering oil regeneration projects. They were a key partner and they are a key partner in Energizing Life program. They are very supportive for Ashington Levelling Up funding it. They were crucial in bringing inward investments such as British Vol, JDR cables, and many, many more. They are also responsible, and thanks to them, we are able to bring investments in areas where private sector would never come in. And I just would like to say to the whole team of Advance, thank you. Thank you for working with me, and thank you for working with council staff. And I'm sure these government's things will be sorted out very soon, and that's the first step today. But there is more positive things to come in very near future. Thank you, Leader.
Very well said, Wojciech. I completely agree with everything you're saying, and I think we would all very much echo our full, total support for Advance, and thanks to everyone involved there. Any questions or queries from anyone? If not, with that amendment, the recommendations are there, and we would like the committee, the Scrutiny Committee, to have a further report within 6 months. So is there a proposed by Councillor Wimmer, seconded by Wojciech? All in favour? Those able to post aye. Thank you. Okay, so now we move on to some new capital proposals. And they are there in front of us. I'm going to ask Jan, I'll ask Jan to briefly introduce each one as we go along, and then ask Richard Wearmouth to add any comments, or Wojciech, as we go along. So, Jan, the first one, please.
Thank you, Leader. So the first recommendation in front of Cabinet is to approve replacement of the glass curtain walling at the Concordia Leisure Centre at a cost of £640,000, and this will be funded through the leisure remedial budget, which has already been set aside.
Good, okay. Richard or Jeff, perhaps? Jeff, do you want to add to this? Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Leader. As Jan has already said, this is just a normal routine maintenance job. It's just a lot of money. It's something that has been wanting for a long time, and it will improve the centre dramatically. Also, I can add a little bit of good news for people who are interested. If anybody knows the Leisure Centre, the lettering on the side of the building has been the subject of some discussion for several months, in that some of the letters fell off. We had a contractor to redo it. It got right to the point where it was approved, and then he backed out. So we had to go back through the sausage machine again and go through planning and everything else. And I understand it's imminent. It's just about to happen with new letters and new telling people exactly what we've got in the leisure centre, which I think people will be happy about.
They will. They'll be delighted that no one in Cramlington decided to do what John Cleese did about Fawlty Towers, and ended up with all sorts of strange, because there are various names and words that could be made from that. So thank goodness that didn't happen. Barry Flux.
How do I follow that? No, I'd say local member in Cramlington, I'm delighted to see that we've got £600,000 plus coming to the leisure centre at Concordia. It is a very well used leisure centre. I go swimming there and it's always full. I know other members and other people in Cramlington use it for the gym and for all other sort of leisure facilities in there. And this really underlines our commitment to Cramlington as a town and to the Concordia Leisure Centre as an important part of the fabric of the town centre. Which, you know, this needs to happen. It is happening, and it's really good to see that investment taking place. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Barry. Yes, very good news for Cramlington. Any questions, queries on this one? We'll take each one as we go along. So, yes, Colin.
Thank you, Leader. Just one quick question. We're looking at the detailed cost estimate. The project management and design fees, more than 10%. Seems rather high.
Jan, over to you on that one.
Thank you. Thank you for the question, Councillor Horncastle. The project management and design fees, we generally use 10% as a guideline, but for more complex projects, it can be higher than that. And I think this is slightly higher. But not out of line with what we would normally expect.
Fine. And Colin's happy with that. So can I have a proposal for this one, please? Proposed by Colin Horncastle and seconded by Councillor Patterson. All in favour of this one? Good. So good news for Cramlington. Thank you very much for that. Then we move on to number 2, which is the Blythe Welding and Fabrication Training Centre, additional funding. Jan?
Yes, thank you, Leader. So we're asking Cabinet to approve an additional allocation of £300,000 to cover increased costs, particularly relating to the plant and equipment components of the scheme. This is a really key part of the post-16 skills strategy, and value engineering has already been done. There isn't any further scope for getting the cost of this scheme down, and we're therefore asking Cabinet to approve that additional allocation.
Thank you very much. This is a really this is a really good investment, I think. Wojciech, do you want to add anything to this?
Again, just a comment that we have spoken about that last year, and I think I said then that it's a very important project for Southeast Northumberland manufacturing sector. We've got very strong manufacturing presence there in Cramlington Industrial Estates, in Blythe, and all of these employers, maybe not all of them, but most of them identified welding and fabrication as skills with very high demand and very little skills available on the job market. So I strongly support that. I know we are struggling with inflation, and that's just another example where the cost increases, but it will bring more and more social and economic regeneration to the region, and it's a very important and crucial project for that area. Thank you.
Yes, it is very important, and this is on top of the over £1 million already that we have put into this centre, which we hope very much will provide opportunities, aspiration, and jobs for people across the county. So I think it's a very, very good investment to make for young people. Anybody else want to add anything? No. Is it proposed by Councillor Postai and seconded by Richard Wearmouth? All in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. And then energising Blythe. Jan.
Thank you, Leader. So this relates to the delivery of the Energising Blythe programme, which is largely funded through the Town Deal funding. So there are 3 connectivity projects which Cabinet are being asked to approve the funding for, and also there is a table set out in the funding section of the report that shows a revised funding profile. I think it's important for members to understand that there is a need to accelerate the delivery of these components of the town investment plan, and hence we're bringing these proposals forward. There is a requirement for us to make some adjustments to the spend profile in the medium-term financial plan, but the costs that we've identified are all within the parameters of the overall budget for this project, and there's no impact on later years. So Cabinet is asked to approve the allocation of a budget of, sorry if I can just find the exact figure, £12,398,789, and the revised funding profile is set out in the annex for those 3 connectivity projects.
Jan, thank you very much. Wojciech, would you like to outline your thoughts on this, please?
Yes, so these 3 projects are complementary to everything what we do as part of Energising Blythe, all of these things which we deliver as part of the project, like new energy central learning hub, new town square redevelopment, cultural center needs good links with other parts of the town. So I hope all of these 3 projects will bring the footfall to the town centre, will allow people to go to the new railway station in Bebbside, will also allow students and people to go to the town centre and Bebbside from the quayside where the new learning hub will be, and other various businesses around the area. So it's a very important, probably smaller part of the project, but it's crucial to bring it together and make it working. Without that, all of these projects would be just standalone things, just dots on the map, which will not bring any substantial regeneration into the area. With that, we are making it right.
Thank you very much, Wojciech. Any questions? John Riddle.
Thank you, Leader.
I think it does actually also add to our commitment to cycling and walking. You know, a lot of this investment is to do with walking corridors and cycling, and it just shows our total commitment to that step change or gear change into away from cars, really, in appropriate areas.
Yes, it does. Thank you very much, John. So, a significant amount of money here for those three projects, and so Blythe will see significant funding coming in, and I think that's only right, and something that we're fully behind, and that will make a big difference for the town and also for the people. So, great news. I'm very much in favour of this. Are we all? Can I have a proposer? Councillor Podgine, seconded by Councillor Wearmouth. All in favour? Yep. That's unanimous. So that takes us to the end of the spending round for this morning. That's a lot of money we've spent, but all on very good projects. So we are at the end of this session. Are there any urgent matters anyone wishes to raise? No? If not, then we need to ask the press and public to leave us. So can we agree to exclude the press and public for the reasons outlined in the agenda, which is mainly around confidentiality? Proposed and seconded. All in favour? Colin? All in favour? Yeah. Thank you very much.